All right, we're going to be having a discussion on presuppositional apologetics with my friend Israel with Wisdom Media. So we'll just wait on him. He should be joining very shortly. Hope everyone's enjoyed their Easter so far. Here I'm texting right now, getting him on.
See the nitty-gritty fun tools and toys.
We'll see if we can get Israel on. I'll message him and see if he's having some technical difficulties. Of course, that's how it always goes. Let's see. Let's see if we can get Israel on. We'll have to check. Sound is good. Thanks, Tanner. We're waiting on my buddy Israel to get on. We're going to be discussing presuppositional apologetics. I'll wait for him to get in before we discuss it any further. How have you been, Tanner? Sound is good. That's good. Once we get this up and rolling, it shouldn't be a problem at all. Wonderful. Tanner's had a good Easter. So how did your morning service go? Or did you teach this morning, Tanner? Trying to see if Israel can get Israel on. Yep, it went great. That's awesome. Or what did you teach on this morning? Yep, went great. It's good. Yeah, I sent him a link. It said his headphones wouldn't connect. He's trying to connect with his computer. He's working on it. So we're waiting on. So far, Tanner's in here. We're waiting on Israel to get finished with the. He's trying to get his technology to work. As always, it doesn't always like to work, especially for me. I'm just bad luck when it comes to technology. Jesse's in here. We're gonna start as soon as we can get our guest Israel to join, which he's having technical difficulties. So talking to Israel now to see if he can get on and see if it's working. Yeah, he might have to go no headphones. Yeah. There you go. I'll have to add him.
Hey, what's up, brother? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, sorry, I got a kind of a technical problem. So I don't know if you see that. The
Yeah.
like the big black square on the right.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can plug my own headphones in because it's going from my mic is going to my headphones. I don't need to hear myself talk. I'll put it here.
Oh, you ever hear yourself much?
Yeah, I don't like hearing myself. Good. Okay, now try talking. There you go. Okay,
Yeah,
now
I
we
was
got.
gonna. Yeah, I
So
was
how have
gonna
you?
plug in.
Okay,
Oh, what's up?
I was asking how you've been.
Oh, yeah, doing fantastic, man. I just came out of church.
Yeah,
That's kind of why I didn't have that much time to
yeah,
prepare the for the stream that much. Guess sorry about that, man.
yeah. Here, I love the Mando mug. You gotta love it.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I just saw it, man, and I was like, oh yeah, this is going to the
Yeah,
stream, man.
yeah,
right away. Yeah, but um, uh, are we live already on
yeah.
the
So we're live right now on YouTube. I try to get it on Facebook. It's not allowing me
mhm,
right now. So right now we're live on YouTube. So I'll go ahead and share
mhm.
that link on my page. And then we'll get started. Um, while I do this, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, just so they get an idea of who you are and what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Israel Trujillo from my page. It's Wisdom Media, and I'm a Christian apologist. I've been debating people for quite a while now, so I was like, uh, I've been doing it for free for so long, so why not start making it a YouTube channel and actually like make something productive out of
Mhm.
the apologetics that I've been learning and stuff. And so yeah, I got a kind of quite a history of debating Mormons, atheists, all the Christians, Muslims, just pretty much other little cults out there. So
Mhm.
right now I'm also writing articles for Katie Christian magazine and and pretty much doing interviews in other places. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much all
Yeah,
I can
that's
say about
awesome.
me right now.
Yeah, so this stream is mostly going to be me and the audience both learning from Israel. He's a lot more wise on this topic than I am for sure. Um, Today, what we're going to be talking about, if you have the title says that we're talking about presuppositional apologetics. Now, before we get any further, I think it'd be good for us to define what we mean by presupposition. So, Israel, if you would go ahead and explain at least what your view, what as far as explain what you think the best explanation on what a presupposition is.
Yeah, I would define it more as a, not just as as a system of beliefs that much. It'll be more as a method of apologetics. And the way it differs is it's with a focus on the presuppositions, on how the underlying factors, that entice that we presuppose pretty much um, whenever we are debating something, because there's a lot of things that we suppose for, like when it comes to atheists, they tend to presuppose naturalism. When it comes to an Armenian reading the Bible, they will read Arminianism, their free will compatibilism, and the Calvinists usually their compatibilism, or they will read predestination, which it leads to many to predeterminism. So we all have lenses, and those lenses are inescapable. And so the way that presuppositional apologetics works is it focuses on the underlying factors of what we're talking about, rather than they'll describe the classical and evidential approach as an approach in which they tend to try to start from a quote unquote neutral ground, which we deny there is a neutral ground, but you can grant it for the sake of argument. And also, yeah, in the classical and evidentialist approach, you got a lot of that you grant a lot. You grant them um, you grant them the knowledge, you grant them ethics, you grant them logic, you grant them a bunch of things in order for them to kind of have a discussion. And the presuppositionalist doesn't grant any of that. We pretty much just don't grant any of it. Although I'm a hybrid, but I'll explain later on in the discussion why I do kind of hybrid apologetics, but that'll be pretty much be what separates uh, the method from from the evidentialist or classical method.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great explanation. Yeah, so so I just want to start it for the audience at least to explain what presupposition is. Now, if you would go ahead and explain to the audience what presuppositional apologetics is, so or how that would look, or something like that. As I try to get my
Mhm.
screen just is having troubles more, so I'll see if I can get that fixed. But yeah, go ahead and explain what presuppositional apologetics is and how that looks, or what it would look like.
Yeah. I guess a fair approach. So, an example of how it will look like, I would say that, for example, if you're debating an ethical question, the presuppositional apologetics will focus on the underlying factors of the ethics themselves, whether a atheist can account for the ethics themselves, and we see this a lot in the moral argument. It's a I would say it's not. It is used by many evidentialists, but it mostly deals with the underlying factors of ethics themselves rather than granting it. Um, so that's one of the things. That's why you see a lot the transcendental argument
Hmm.
when it comes to logic. The or while the evidentialists will try to put the neutral position and analyze through a logical case, a syllogistic form. Let's say, for example, like William Craig, how he presents the Kalam cosmological argument. He presents a logical case for why God is the best explanation out of the evidence. So it deals more with the probabilistic terms.
Hmm.
That's what you would see with non-presuppositional approaches, that they deal a lot with possibilities, a lot with probabilities. So in the column, if you notice that they usually grant the ability of logic to the the atheists, kind of like so they can take it as an axiom. That is usually what their one of their main objections of when it comes to when you ask them to account for the laws of logic, they just say, oh, they're axioms. Okay, but the question is not whether you take axioms arbitrarily. The question is whether your worldview can actually be compatible and coherent along with the laws of logic. So in the Kalam, for example, you grant a lot of that, and so in your method, you kind of go into a neutral approach, and the way of presuppositional apologetics would look, you you would start with having the atheists prove that they can actually account for logic before you can deal with the other arguments. But you can combine them. It's not like you cannot as a presuppositionalist.
Yeah.
It is not like you cannot use the cosmological argument, but the difference is the approach and the emphasis. That'll be the main difference. So it's not that big of a difference. Some apologists make a big fuss about it, but it's more about an approach, and it's pretty useful in many cases, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I noticed about even with what you're explaining is with presuppositional apologetics or that approach, they really when you boil it down, they assume or they say that you have to have the assumption that you have to assume God before you can have knowledge or logic or if you get what I'm saying. Are you following me when I say that? Yeah.
Yeah,
Where
sure.
yeah, so the assumption of God is the beginning of knowledge is what they believe, which that's as we're talking, that's not at least I don't think that's entirely true because yes, we would grant that God is the beginning of knowledge since we believe he's the creator of the universe and he's the author of logic, but that doesn't mean that you have to assume God before you can have logic. And I think that's what presuppositional apologetics what it really that's one thing I see in it that I don't necessarily think that follows. So what were your thoughts on that?
Well, usually they paint it more as as a court case. That'll be how they paint it. So the um, yeah, how they paint it is that when it comes to a court case, you got a person that is on trial, and you got a person that yeah, you got a defender and someone that is going against, and pretty much what what it's trying to say is that they put the atheist in the judging seats, kind of putting God on trial. That's usually how it's painted. Although I've seen some cool objections from one that was mentioned by Jonathan Pritchett and Braxton Hunter that you're kind of forced to do that in some scenarios. That they say that okay, but when you are seeing if the atheist can account for the loss of logic, they would argue that you're kind of doing the same thing. But that'll be an objection against presuppositional apologetics that you ultimately have to do the same thing. But that is why I describe it more as an approach rather than an approach or method, an emphasis on what we're doing, but it's not. I don't know if I agree with Pritchett, but I think it's a good objection that you ultimately kind of have to do with that somehow.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. One thing that before we go any further, would you go ahead and explain what your view would be? Because you said that you would take a more hybrid approach. So if you could just explain that a little further, just so we can get more of a grasp of where you're coming from.
Yeah, perfect. So I believe that there are certain scenarios in which we should grant the unbeliever those type of so at least take it as axioms to work on something else. But I would see it in different uses. There are some times in which, for example, if kind of like the faith is on trial, if like a debate scenario, if you're debating a Matthew Hunty or a Michael Shermer, which are really God haters. Like
Yeah.
they really portray the gospel that they want to do away with the gospel. They see it in a very negative light. So it's
Mhm.
I would say it's a different forum than talking to a friend that is more open minded and that it's trying to make sense of things. So I would say if that there are some times that you can that you can actually yeah, just grant stuff for the sake of argument in order
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
in order to actually like, have a meaningful discussion. At least to kind of take the challenge that okay, all right, I'm going to grant you that you can use the loss of logic, and I'll
Mhm.
pretend that we're going to forget that you cannot account for it. But
Mhm.
okay, using the loss of logic that we both grant, um, I don't think you can still account for atheism or for naturalism,
Mhm.
depending on the argument that one is talking about. So I would say I would use it more in a different scenario. So
Okay.
it's depending on who am I speaking with
Yeah. Yeah. That's
and
good.
on the intentions of the atheists. If the intention of the unbelievers to actually learn, to actually yeah, a person that is more open, that
Mhm.
just it's honestly seeking truth, I guess, we can grant them those as actions.
Okay. So before we go any further, are there any because I want to go more into depth because like I said, I am not as learned on this um as Israel is. That's why I had him on because I think he'd be very good at explaining to the audience so we both can learn. So me and the audience both are kind of on this ride. So what um what initial or what are some problems you have with um presuppositional apologetics or what um why would you not consider yourself a presuppositionalist? If that makes sense. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I get you, and I wouldn't say there are problems with the presuppositionalism
Mm,
itself. I would say
yeah.
it is more with the kind of baggage that is dragged into
Mm,
by other apologists. I'm not going to mention names, but
yeah.
I guess you all know them. So sometimes presuppositional apologists may be a little bit condescending or
Mm,
uh, I wouldn't say judgmental because we can actually have righteous judgment over another person,
mhm,
but I would say they uh, some apologies, not that there are some precepts that are pretty open-minded, but there are some out there that pretty much demonize you if you're not a
mhm,
presuppositionalist.
yeah.
And I was actually demonized a little bit before I became one. So
Yeah.
I never expected like people were gonna someone was gonna make a big fuss about my method of apologetics.
Mhm,
So that caught a lot of my attention. That's kind of how I got into it. But
mhm,
I'm not for the baggage that usually gets dragged out along with it.
yeah.
Of saying that yeah, pretty much putting the I would say rhetoric that'll be the word, the rhetoric um, onto the opposing views. So
Yeah.
what they do is instead of saying okay, we're going to do an analysis of God's of some of God ontological descriptions, and we're going to do an analysis of it. They would do the rhetoric of saying, "Oh, so you're putting God on trial,
Mm,
so you're letting the atheists actually judge God Himself," and that's kind of like the rhetoric thing. It's a lot of what the atheists tend to do, but
mhm,
we as Christians we tend to do rhetoric too. And you
yeah.
see it in all kinds of debates, but I'm not a big fan of rhetoric to be honest. But that, yeah, that'll be one of my my
Yeah.
main things on precept. Yeah.
So do you think that because there's obviously different methods of apologetics, do you think that which method you use would depend on the situation, the person, or do you think that um or I'm trying to think of
On
how it
both.
could work. Go ahead.
I would say on both. I would say it depends on the situation and
Mm-hmm.
also on the person. There's maybe you got as we were saying, someone that is honestly trying to seek out the truth and you kind of take the adventurous approach and you put God on trial. So I mean, but if you get into a situation, let's say a public in a public forum
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much it kind of has a connotation that um, uh, let's say it's a counter campaign for atheism or countering secularism in schools or
Mm-hmm.
using a very secular public campus. You gotta you gotta be a little more harsh
Mm-hmm.
on your on your methods, and I think presuppositionalism is a little bit more harsh because you don't grant like anything at all. Like you just
Oh
can
yeah,
do
yeah,
absolutely anything.
yeah,
So yeah, I would say it depends on
yeah.
what the audience and the purpose of the encounter is.
So so in order to bring more light on this, whenever you let's say that someone or imagine a presuppositionalist is presenting the gospel to someone, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, there's many people that would start with the gospel, and then as they push back, give different justifications for the resurrection of Christ or something like that. So let's say a presuppositionalist is presenting the gospel, and someone were to push back and say, "Well, I think to hold a belief in God is unreasonable." Um, how would a presuppositionalist respond to someone pushing back on something like that?
Well, I guess if they're calling something unreasonable, I guess that'll take us for sure to the transcendental argument for the existence
Hmm.
of God.
Yeah.
Um, which pretty much says that they wouldn't be able to account for logic. So if we put it in a syllogistic form, I would put it out as the first premise, saying um, that atheism cannot account for you got first of all, we got to deal with the law of excluded middle,
Hmm.
which is that something is either A or non-A. So there's nothing in the middle of A or non-A. So and by that we put the same thing with God, either God or no not God. So
Hmm.
you got two you got two options. There's no third option that
Hmm.
or you by like the law of excluded middle. And so the first premise would be dealing with the um, with claiming that theism can actually account for the laws of logic. It would say that um, if the laws of logic exist, either have to be explained by A or non-A. I
Hmm.
would put it that way. And the second premise would be the laws of logic cannot be explained by non-A, which would be atheism.
Hmm.
Therefore, the laws of logic have to be explained with A, which is theism. And with that syllogistic form of the argument, now we will have to have the atheist 100% clear. There are most common objections, which are either that logic comes from evolution. They also make the objection of the loss of logic being a human convention.
Hmm.
So pretty much kind of like a unanimous position, kind of like
Hmm.
um, yeah, like a democratic form, which is I think it's terrible. It's one
Hmm.
of the worst ones.
Hmm.
You also got the objection that we should take it as axioms,
Hmm.
which is like pretty much saying I don't know how to account for it, but I know they work.
Hmm.
So knowing that they work, I'm just gonna take them, and later on one day science and one day science will find out how all of this works. Usually that's kind of the level you get from axioms.
Hmm.
And I think there was a yeah there was another objection that they were showing
Okay.
on me. Oh man, I had on the tip of my tongue, man. I forgot
Yeah,
about
like
it.
right now I'm kind of shooting from the hip actually, because like I told you I was trying to get my my screen fixed, and I didn't actually get it fixed. You have to like go for Max. It's really hard to get it fixed. But I thought I got it working. So right now my whole screen went dark. So I'm kind of like going off what I remember. So sorry if I feel like I'm lost. I'm trying to stay on track. One thing I would like to ask is, do you think presuppositional apologetics is practical? Um, do you think it's a practical approach to reaching others with Christ?
Yeah. Actually, I would say it's extremely practical. When it comes to untrained unbelievers, I would say it's actually like way more effective than an evidentialist approach. Um, and a lot of this, a lot of people don't like Sykes and Burton Gates.
Hmm.
It's a very controversial guy. I honestly like him, but of course we all have our weaknesses and strengths.
Yeah.
But what I would say about a side that really that I actually really agree with him is that when you actually observe side dealing with unbelievers, usually you get you don't get as much pushback
Yeah.
from atheists. Like you can pretty much see how they are. Um, pretty much helpless with the presuppositional approach because you kind of have to get and start to think like okay like how do I make sense of the
Hmm.
lots of logic and even it's a big problem because even for the best atheist scholars in the realm of philosophy and religion, they also can answer that question that well. So even atheist philosophers wouldn't answer that question.
Hmm.
They pretty much would leave it as open. Okay, I don't know, but one day we will find out.
Hmm.
And so, but when you see, for example, from a Matt Dillahunty, he's got a couple debates on the loss of logic, and he'll pretty much play the cynic, the I don't know card.
Hmm.
That's pretty much his approach. So for so he'll basically his whole case will be based on I don't know and you do not know either.
Hmm.
So it's yeah, but
Yeah.
as you remember on the syllogistic form that I presented, the loss of logic must be explained by either A or non-A.
Hmm.
You cannot just claim I don't know because you can um, you can put whatever dumb worldview out there, like maybe your universe was created by a by this culprit here, but it'll be contingent, so it'll be logically incoherent, incompatible with creating the loss of logic. It couldn't account logically because it's a contingent object. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think they're effective because of that, pretty much that atheists pretty much don't have an answer. And
Yeah.
when it comes to unbelievers that are untrained, you don't have that much baggage to pretty much throw when you don't have an answer. And trained atheists can throw baggage when they don't have an
Yeah.
answer. That'll be why it's practical, I think.
Yeah. So, which correct me if I'm wrong, but some things that as I started learning about different methods of apologetics, the first thing I noticed that is it's hard to even I might be wrong on this, but it might even be hard to even have a healthy discussion with an atheist because if I were to say that you have to assume God before we can even have a discussion using logic, you have to, or or even they believe that whenever atheist is trying to use logic to put God on trial, that he's actually stealing or borrowing from the Christian worldview because in order to because they believe you have to assume God before you can have logic. So it seems that it's almost counterproductive in a way, like it almost hinders conversation. Would you say that's accurate, or is that just a misunderstanding on my part?
Yeah, I would actually say it's a misunderstanding.
Okay.
Um, usually, what you do with people that do not take the got us a grounding. You take atheism, so you let the atheist have try to explain things with these atheism, pretty much granting atheism to lead it to absurdity, which is pretty much okay. Let's grant that uh, let's grant that atheism is sure okay. And not try to give you an explanation of how it can explain the laws of logic. So it wouldn't be much of okay, accept my presupposition. It is more like saying okay, let's use your presupposition and try to give me an answer on how you explain the laws of logic or knowledge or morality or any of the other transcendent universals.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because like I was saying, like that's why I wanted for this live stream. I wanted to almost make it more of an interview like this because I wanted, as far as I know with me, I don't know as much on this topic, and I figured the audience was the same way. I wanted to put it in terms that we all could learn from it, almost be like um, a
Mhm.
healthy discussion. Yeah, so I appreciate you doing that. Um,
No problem,
s-
man. That's it.
so is there any other so is there anything else you think is important to point out as far as presuppositionalism?
Yeah. One of the things as I mentioned briefly with the cup example is that you either have to deal with A or not A,
Hmm.
and pretty much you can plug in whatever in non A. So
Hmm.
not just naturalism, but you can put a unicorn, you can put a cup, you can put whatever string theory, multiverse.
Hmm.
You can plug in whatever you want as non-A or non-theism,
Hmm.
um, and try to work it out and see if it can actually account for any other stuff. So, as a joke, sometimes some atheists tend to bring like Matt Dillahunty today. Oh
Yeah.
man, I'm saying Matt Dillahunty too much today. He says universe creating pixies, and
Hmm.
I've heard some other atheists say the spaghetti monster.
Yeah.
I heard some other atheists say I don't know some flying unicorn or
Yeah.
yeah, I guess we can deal with all of these. So, for example, with the spaghetti monster, you have to deal with the ontology of spaghetti. The
Hmm.
ontology is the study of being. So, how we study what is something.
Hmm.
So, if we study for example, the ontology of a triangle, if some artist draws some artistic form of triangle, you wouldn't say that he created a triangle because it's a transcendent thing. So it is you would have to go a little bit further than naturalism. So you get into metaphysics. It is a abstract object and an abstract yeah, it's an abstract object, and when generalized the ontology of a triangle, you'll see that it is very much described as an abstract object with three sides that
Hmm.
can be of different sizes each, but three sides united with straight lines on
Hmm.
them. That'll be a kind of like a simplistic way. So okay, so when it comes to the ontology of a spaghetti monster, you pretty much uh, have to ask yourself what a spaghetti is made of. So you would say that it is that it is sweet, it is tomato sauce, it is beef, and
Hmm.
you know that all of these are completely things. They're not personal. They don't have a quality of a necessary ultimate cost since they are
Hmm.
contingent. They cannot be the first cost in order to create something. Because God, we're asking for the origins of the loss of logic in the
Hmm.
universe. So, as some apologists put it, it cannot be explained by whatever is within the universe or within the laws of logic to create all these things. The same way that in Toy Story, it would be wrong to ask to say that the realm of Toy Story was created within something within Toy Story, it would be something beyond Toy Story, which would be the movie production people that actually make the movie. So it is something external to Toy Story, and so we're trying to explain the laws of logic, and we're trying to explain uh, the origin of the universe, life itself, just matter. Well, why is there something rather than nothing? So it wouldn't be able to be explained by something within nature. It must be something outside of nature. So by analyzing all of the qualities that the something that had to create all of the everything in existence, it must be something beyond nature, and we know that a spaghetti is within the within the laws of nature,
Yeah.
and yeah, I couldn't account for logic. So you deal with the ontology. You do the same with the pixies, which will be more arbitrary. One of the qualities that Matt tries to put in is he says universe creating pixies.
Yeah.
But okay, there's a ontological factor behind everything everything we say that there's an abstract object. So what do we mean by pixies? So it'll be kind of like a fairy tale description. Some people paint it different ways, but by the way they paint it, by the way they portray it, you can tell it is something. Um, it cannot be it cannot be omnipresent, which will be one of the qualities that must have to be done, because in order to create everything, you have to be everywhere in order to be where the other things were created. You got to be everywhere, and in a way, Pixie, it's it'll be kind of like centralized to the parts itself of the pixie, whichever way it is drawn or pictured in whatever fairy tale we're discussing. So it depends
Yeah.
on the fairy tale how they put it, but you can tell it's contingent by how it looks, and it will be present. But they can put some more arbitrary assumptions with the pixies, not just universe creating. You can pretty much plug in whatever other arbitrary quality you want to this pixie, but you deal with the ontology to see if it matches the actual um, yeah, to pretty much see if it matches what the necessary cause of the universe and the laws of logic must be. So that is how that is how atheists very much have to deal with the syllogism. Try to make it fit with the pretty much with the first cause of the explanation of other the laws of logic or anything. So they got to plug it in and very good word which
Yeah.
atheists hate doing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
internet atheists. Let me clarify. Internet atheists.
Mhm. So, so what I want to do, which I think this will be most helpful for the audience, is we kind of explained what presuppositional apologetics is, and I think they got a grasp. So what I want to do is ask. This could apply to any method of apologetics, which I'm detouring a little bit, but I feel like this would be really helpful. Is um, so so in your everyday to day lives, you might meet someone, you might try to share the gospel with them, and they have certain objections, or they have certain problems with what you're saying. Um, what is a practical way you can introduce apologetics into your while you're sharing the gospel with someone? Because sometimes I know sometimes it may come across you just list a bunch of arguments and they don't really know what to do with it. So as far as what you personally do, how do you think you can practically engage in apologetics as you share the gospel with people in a practical way?
A practical way.
Mhm.
Well, I would say that that's a pretty tough question
Yeah,
because
yeah. Which I'm
there's
sorry for
people.
putting on you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I try to evangelize the way I can. I'm not a, I evangelize pretty different from other people. Like you're not gonna see me do it the right conflict way.
Mhm.
I think it goes a little bit too emotional on it. But we'll have our method of sharing the gospel. So
Yeah.
it depends on who am I speaking with.
Yeah.
It depends who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with someone that is you find a lot of people that are just pretty much kind of had a hurtful experience with at church. They that or with a pastor or with Christians.
Mm,
They kind of had a disappointment. Like you would deal with those people different than someone like I got a friend that he's an open theist
mm,
and oh sorry man.
mm,
I got a friend that is an open theist, and but he studies the Bible a lot. He's pretty much a Bible nerd. Um, he knows the Bible pretty well. He knows he's actually an open theist because he's convinced by the arguments from theism. So he gets a lot into the realm of philosophy and religion. So I deal with him a little bit different than I would deal with a person that has more of an emotional um, kind of approach. Which honestly, I'll be totally honest with you, I'm a little bit bad with people that take an emotional approach. However, the way that I usually do it is you first and foremost try to empathize with them. Of course, you got to show them the love of
mm,
Christ, yeah, you pretty much have to love them some comprehension, some
mm,
love and affection and stuff. And and one of the things that it it so sometimes you may not need presuppositional apologetics that much. Sometimes you just got to deal with the emotions of the other person. However, if we're talking about an atheist that pretty much is making the positive claim that belief in God or belief in the Bible is irrational,
mm,
that'll be the time in which we would introduce presuppositional apologetics and you ask them
yeah.
the kind of basic questions that you see that people ask, like okay, how do you account for knowledge? How can you have knowledge without God? You pretty much ask them that.
Mm,
And they'll try to use the explanations that we mentioned before of saying axioms, evolution, human convention, or we don't know, and you pretty much just go from there. And okay, so you try to teach them. Okay, so you teach them why those things don't work, and
mm,
now you bring the Bible into the picture. And before you get to the Bible, of course, you try to bring the attributes of God, how God is all powerful, how He can do all things, um, how um, how pretty much we can have morality without Him. You
mm,
bring all the verses that relate to the attributes of God, and from there, I guess you can bring some other arguments like the
mm,
Quran or contingency argument or the ontological argument, and try to plug in those biblical attributes um, uh, to the qualities of the necessary being that must be behind as a first cause. So, so yeah, I will go personally in that order. I
mm,
will first deal with the how they cannot account for the laws of logic. Then I would say I will go with the biblical verses explaining the ontology of God, and and then I would help them kind of connect the dots between the attributes of God displayed on the Bible and the attributes of the necessary attributes of the first cause, which
mm,
would be God. So if you see how these plays out, how there's a three-part system, kind of like as I put it, you always start with the presupposition. That is what presuppositional apologetics. You can pretty much break down their barriers with the how they cannot account
mm,
for the presuppositions, but
mm,
how actually the Bible can account for the presuppositions. And from the Bible, of course, after you give the ontological examples from the Bible, which of course are important, but you also preach the gospel. You can also introduce how the first necessary cause has to have a sense of agency because a non-agent entity wouldn't be able to decide to do something else. So we know that it had to make a decision, and if it makes a decision, it makes that it is an agent, it is a person, it is a personal being with agency, if you explore the qualities of that agent, if it's an agent that pretty much creating everything and it's the maximal um, maximal great being, it will have maximal great attributes like maximal love, maximal care, maximal justice, maximal all of this stuff, which you can easily, well, if you know your Bible, you can easily plug it in with the pretty much with biblical concepts like connecting the dots with it.
So something I'd like to point out or want to ask you about, which I think will bring a lot of clarity to this topic, is where do you think, because most people are familiar with the classical approach. Would you agree with that?
Um, I would say uh, I would say it's a little bit more popular. You see presuppositional apologetics more into usually with Calvinists or
Yeah. Or like
I've
James
also seen it
White,
with
or yeah. Because I know
you
James
see
White,
with
yeah.
hmm yeah James White, Matt Slick, Satan Burden Gates, um, Darth Dawkins, which so what am I? So, it's a really funny guy. Man.
Yes. Go ahead.
But you also see it with I've seen it with some Eastern Orthodox too, like Jay Dyer, and Jay Dyer is actually like pretty well, really well trained when it comes to logic and the presuppositional approach. I think he's one of the best defenders we have with the presuppositional approach. Jay Dyer. He deals more with the with the transcendental argument. Pretty much. He graduated. He studied logic pretty much, so it's his specialty. Well, one of his specialties. But yeah, you see it in Eastern Orthodox, and I wouldn't say that all Eastern Orthodox are presuppositional apologetics, but it's kind of growing within the realm, and if I don't know how if other Christians know this, but other um, Eastern Orthodoxy has grown pretty much hugely in places like China, the Middle East. When we observe in the news the persecution of Christians in China, the Middle East, or other places more eastern from where we are, it is usually Eastern Orthodox. So I don't know, maybe a majority later on, but yeah, I would say that right now it's mostly a minority. But I would of course say that we shouldn't be basing our our thinking based on majority or minority positions, since the majority of scholars in certain areas, like in biology, for example, are would be unbelievers and wouldn't take, for example, younger creationism. So if a younger creationist wants to defend their position, they can do it on majority. Or if, pretty much it would depend there are some branches in which there's majority of Christians, and there's branches where there's majority of atheists. There can be branches of astronomy. You tend to see more Christians than in branches like biology.
So the reason I asked that is, since that's one of the most popular views, where do you think presuppositionalism in the classical approach, where do you think they're different, and like what's one crucial way they're different, if that makes sense?
As we mentioned at the beginning, I would say it's on the approach and
Yeah.
the method of it. So pretty much how you structure your project. So
Okay.
it's more of a matter of structure rather than um, yeah, it's a matter of structure. So for example, you can analyze the cases of famous classical or English apologists, and they usually don't deal much with they don't emphasize the presuppositions. They like pretty much granted a little bit more. So that's kind of like how you will notice it a little bit more. So when it comes to Craig, of course, he would bring the argument of the resurrection and the one cosmological argument, depending on who he is debating and what the topic is, and uh, yeah, pretty much. So it'll be the method, what you emphasize, and if you
Yeah.
see a debate of Matt Slick, if you see a debate of Saitan or James White, you're gonna see that they're gonna talk more about the uh, the fundamentals from which we judge all things, which is really the presupposition. So they'll start more with the um, asking the atheist how they can account for logic, or they may go with a presentation that they can account for logic or for morality or knowledge. So that you cannot know anything. So they will start from there, and then maybe bring some other type of arguments. But that is why you can see the debates play out very differently from a
Yeah.
evidentialist to a presuppositionalist. You see the same patterns, the same kind of debates. Pretty much, yeah, they look alike because of that, because it's an approach. It's what you emphasize and what you um, um, yeah, what you emphasize. So, for example, I was seeing a debate of Matt Slick.
Mm.
It had the topic of um, our what was the topic? I think it was, is our Christian values better than secular, or are Christian values good values, or better than humanism, or something like that.
Mm.
So it was more about talking about the values themselves compared to secular humanism.
Yeah.
So if you get this question, the way a eventualist would approach this question, they'll pretty much go with the history of Christianity, how atheists overemphasize or misinterpret some of facts of history. For example, you see a lot with the Inquisition. They say, okay, they were religious and they did these things allegedly on the Bible, but they would, for example, like focus more on how this is a misunderstanding, because at those times they people were actually not reading the Bible. You have to go to a priest, and the priest has
Mm.
to read it for you, and usually they were using the Latin Vulgates.
Mm.
So they had the mass on Latin,
Mm.
and or the scriptures in Latin, and people just wouldn't understand that thing. So Tyndale had to he tried to translate the Bible into English, but the Catholic Church burned them, and his intention was to make the text for the people, which later became the Textus Receptus, the text of the people, from which people can actually have a Bible in a language that they can actually understand, and not needing a priest to
Mm.
tell a thing. So they would deal more, an evidentialist or a classical would deal a little bit more with the history of it, with the of how ethics play out in the daily life. They would focus more on how they'll yeah, pretty much in the history of ethics, or they will point out maybe in the history of secularism, how pretty much ungodliness played out in the 20th century, which was the bloodiest century that we had so far. So they will, for example, point out what one quick fact about Karl Marx is that some atheists have tried to defend Karl Marx by saying that he's that he's not a bad hater. He simply is trying to pretty much go against capitalism and whatever. But there's other writings from his poems, his plays. He still will write plays, and he will write. Yeah, he was pretty much an artist, and in some of his writings, you can clearly see how he pretty much hates God, and he depicts God in pretty harsh terms in several different ways. So He was definitely against God. So it was against the church, against Christianity, against God, against religion in general, and against the opening of the people. So the evidentialists would kind of focus on that type of stuff and how from Marx it derived to socialism and communism, and how these secular countries pretty much can have that secularism uh, uh, pretty much play out the way they want, because they don't have a standard from which they base their ethics. You can pretty much make up their own ethics if you don't want to do ethical humanism, secular humanism. You don't have to. It's something arbitrary that it gets try to point out, but. So yeah, it'll deal a little bit more with the history and deal with the same question a presuppositionalist would base his argument more on the moral argument for the existence of God. So saying that if there's no God, there's very much no morality that one can ground oneself on. And again, the atheist will try to say, um, uh, um, we'll try to bring the axiom uh, type of objection.
Mm-hmm.
So some will bring like make it that we'll try to say that it is objective, because usually I've noticed a trend on atheists that they're trying to make it more objective than it actually is. So the way that they try to portray objectivism in morality, they try to put it as a game of chess. So the game of chess has an objective purpose within that game of chess, because there's rules within how each piece must move.
Mm-hmm.
So the knight cannot act like a rook, and the rook cannot act like a queen, etc. So they try to make it objective, but it's mostly arbitrary, because we're pretty much arbitrarily deciding that humans must pretty much make these um, pretty much grant this set of objective. I mean, you do as objective. Um, uh, like, it's very much ultimately subjective, because you're choosing to set up those rules. So even though you try to make it objective, but it's still arbitrary, because you chose to do it that way, and there's nothing objective to say that you cannot do it the other way around. So yeah, the presuppositionalist will deal with the moral argument, also with the loss of logic. So the way that Matt Slick kind of played it out was that okay, how do you uh, pretty much how do you describe something being as better than the other, like secular humanism being better than Christianity? Like in order to be better, it must be true. So the way that he played it out is saying, oh, okay, so we're gonna use atheism. We're gonna put atheism on trial, put the presupposition of atheism on trial, and try to bring self contradiction. So the approach of Matt Slick was about bringing self contradictions within the presuppositions of atheism, while the classical or evidential guy will go for more a historical or analysis of a situational ethics, pretty much bringing the how um, how something ethical matches Christian values rather than secular ones. So I don't know if you see the difference in how you can have the exact same question that is going to be debated, but how these two apologists, what they choose to argue on, and pretty much how they lead the debate itself. It's pretty different. I hope I don't know if you saw the big difference there.
Yeah, I did. It definitely was a help. Um, so we're coming up at around an hour right now on our stream, and I think that we really covered all the points that that we talked about earlier, and that we want to address. So just real fast, is there any um is there anything really else that you think we need to cover, or do you think that we mostly just got a good view on what we were talking about today? Is there anything else you thought we missed or anything like that?
Um, well, I would say usually a big emphasis um, that you see a lot with the tension between precepts and the rest will be on biblical issues, saying that one is biblical and the other is not.
Mm.
Um, I would say that that'll be kind of like what we missed a little bit on that.
Yeah.
However, um, one of the verses that presuppositionalists tend to use a lot when justifying the approach would be the proverb. Let me see if I got it right here. It's mm, just oh man, I didn't have it ready.
I know. Well, like right now, like this entire live stream, my screen's been black. So I've been shooting from the hip. Here, what verse were you wanting to get?
Oh yeah, it's Proverbs 26, 4 to 5. It says, answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. So that is one of the main verses that presuppositionalists try to argue for. That allegedly fits more with presuppositionalism
Mm.
in the sense that when you answer a fool according to his folly, you pretty much become a fool yourself. Since you'll pretty much be you'll you'll pretty much be entering their realm. For example, if someone is a subjectivist and you try to argue there's a subjective view to try to prove it with subjectivism, bringing up a subjective view to to disprove another subjective view, it'll be total folly because it's impossible. Subjectivism is self-refuting in and of itself. Um, and the other parties answer full according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. So what it's saying right here is that you answer a fool in the sense that you're pretty much showing how his presupposition is a folly in and of itself. So you deal more with the root of the folly rather than granting the folly in and of itself. But however, I would say that when it comes to the classical approach, you're not going to see much of the you're not going to see much of of the apostles putting pretty much God on trial or anyone doubting theism. So it'll be more of a given of a presupposition. So they pretty much built their case around that. Pretty much saying that there's no examples in which you can put God on trial or you what questioning God's existence. You pretty much have it as a given, although that's a big debate in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a good debate that I recommend you guys to watch. It
Mm.
was Eric Hernandez versus Sykes and Burngate, and Eric tries to actually burn his burden proof, trying to prove evidentialism from a biblical perspective. But
Mm.
yeah, I really recommend you guys that uh, that debate. So Eric, I think Eric does a reasonable job, although I that is why I don't argue much claiming that evidentialism or classical approach is unbiblical. I would
Mm.
say it's debatable. I would say it's
Yeah.
debatable, but it is unclear. I would say it's a little bit more on the side of
Mm.
presuppositionalism because we at least have our position as a given as a clear answer. We at least know that we take stuff at presuppositions in the Bible, while the other approaches are ambiguous, are hard to prove, but you might be able to get a case from that. I would say that's kind of what we missed from the interview, but yeah, I
Mm.
guess it's yeah, I guess we're not missing anything other than that. We'll just be getting more deeply into each of the arguments that we explored so far.
Yeah. So I'd agree. I think we covered everything that we wanted to cover. The purpose of this live stream was more to just like have like an introduction to it anyway. Just maybe in the future we can go more in depth on this, but this is more of just like this is more just to present it and just kind of to discuss it. It wasn't like but obviously Israel did most of the talking just because he's a lot more learned on this subject than I am. So that's why I had him on, and I'd like to have you on in the future to talk about different topics because I think you are are very. I like your take on a lot of things. That's why I like to have these type of discussions with you. So I appreciate
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, man. We
yeah, I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
you coming on. I'm sorry that this is like my first live stream I hosted, so it's not the best. There's definitely ways I can improve. So I apologize if it was about as hard to follow Israel, but yeah, but I appreciate you coming on. Yeah, so here's anything
No,
else
no,
you
it's
want to say?
actually no,
Go ahead.
it was actually good, man. You answered you asked the right questions, and
Okay.
I think it was productive. I think that that'll give a big picture on what we're dealing with presuppositionalism, man. And
Yeah.
no, we got straight to the point, man.
Yeah.
There was nothing bad about it, man.
Yeah. So what?
And
Here, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, and I really appreciate that you invited me here, man. And I
Yeah.
hope that your audience uh, really like that and found it useful, man.
Yeah. Yes. So what I really like to do is on our next discussion we have or like a live stream, I really like to just have like a almost like a heart to heart in a way, just kind of like tell us about like your testimony, and how you came to the faith and just stuff like that. Because I really enjoyed it at the beginning. Gave your story. I really like that. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that'll be cool, man. And yeah, I got a big journey, and I guess hopefully you like it. But yeah, it was more of a um, it wasn't much of a conversion, but it was more about how I accepted
hmm
pretty much looking at it as not just as rational, but
yeah,
now why I think is that atheism is just a terrible ideology. I
yeah,
just don't even consider it anymore. It's I would just say it's extremely coherent. Like it doesn't even pass my mind
mm,
as a doubt. Like
mhm,
so yeah, I guess we should dig into that in our next topic. And
yeah,
a lot of it will include analysis on how atheists in different branches what they're missing out and how pretty much I didn't found them compelling in the big names that we're pretty much seeing from the new atheist movement and even from the philosophers of religion. So
yeah,
I think it'll be pretty interesting how pretty much analyze them a little bit and see what they're missing. But yeah, it's a big part of my testimony.
yeah,
Maybe we can explain why in the next one.
yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So I think we covered everything we want to cover. So I feel like we should just go ahead and end it there, and we'll do this again.
Sure, man. And
Yep.
again, thank you so much, man, for inviting me. It was a big pleasure, and yeah, I just hope everybody liked the discussion.
Yep. Yep. Thank you, everyone. And I'm sorry if I didn't answer questions. Of course, which is always how it works. My screen just started working right when we were ending it, but there was a few questions in there, but we didn't get to all of them. But next one we should be able to do that in that next in our next discussion. So thank you all for joining. Thanks for bearing with me as a this is my first live stream. I appreciate you, Israel, coming on. Okay.
Yeah, pleasure, man. Good to see you, bro. God
Yep.
bless you.
Yep. God bless you too.
Goodbye.